Welcome to Not Factory Approved. Here's the latest acquisition. I decided I didn't have enough projects. It looks pretty good from the outside, unless you look real close. It was super cheap. It's a 99 V10 E350, 163,000 kilometers, which is around 100,000 miles. Interior for the cab is good. Just needs a cleaning. The rest of it, not so much. It does drive pretty well. It had an ABS fault, which was just a sensor. $30 and that's fixed. It doesn't start real well. It has to fire about 3 times before it finally will run. And that may have to do with old gas. It does have a new battery. Tires are good. They only have a few thousand kilometers on them. But you can see some hints here. What's going on. I've taken the rubber off of there, but see, there's nothing there. And that's because the windows both sides were leaking for a long period of time, as well as this here is aluminum, and what you get when you combine aluminum with steel is a battery. So one of the plates has to erode, and it's the aluminum. So I have to replace that. You can see the floor was rotten here. The guy's wife was doing the construction work, or deconstruction, so she cut all that. They removed the linoleum, so further stripping there to do. The battery box, which is behind this power distribution, and that piece of plywood is all corroded and rusted right out because the battery split. And usually they split because they got really cold and they were really discharged. And that's what happened there. You can see there, they've taken out the framing. And why would they do that? Well, because it was rotten. You can see all that. This is going to be a little harder to fix. This part, no big deal. I took a 1/2-inch sheet of plywood, a strip rather, and glued it to a 5/8 piece of plywood, and that's the thickness. And this is attached here, so I got to do something with gluing styrofoam insulation onto that. And I'll replace the insulation. So you can see the rot goes right up into the front wing, past the cab. I've taken the insulation out of there, most of it anyway. It's got a good strong steel bracket there. We've had a Vanguard 5th wheel, and it was really well built. So I have hope that this can be brought back to life and we'll be fine. So you can see there's been lots of rot and problems. So they had they built 1-inch styrofoam into the floor, lots of plywood, really strong floor, and 1-inch styrofoam on the walls. So I don't know for sure, but I'm going to imagine it's 1-inch styrofoam in the ceiling as well. That's not showing any signs of leaking. That should be okay. But it's fairly plain. It does have a cab air, some aftermarket radio, wind-up windows, and a rubber mat. So, work to be done. But they only asked $2,000 for it, so that's pretty cheap. And they got a little wild with the paintbrush. They've primered everything. But some of this I'm going to have to strip out. Like this cupboard I might have to strip out because of the battery box. And I'll show you what's going on there. So you can see on this side signs of much leaking. Old smear on the silicone thicker treatment. So that all has to be stripped. The windows have to come out anyway to make sure that the wood is good and the leak is stopped. So there's lots of stuff to be fixed. So you can see the battery box here. This was the base of it. You can see it's had a lot of battery acid from the battery splitting. So I have to get that out of there, put a new piece in, and build a new battery box. That's why I think I might have to take the cabinet out, because the battery box is slightly bigger than this opening. Or I can put one in pieces. But the reason I stripped this was I want to try and get that rail out that's in here, this one. That's the seat rail for the bench. You can see there. And that is in the way of replacing the wood that runs along here. And that's had a fair bit of rust too. So things to fix, definitely. The trouble with rot is it's much like rust. The more you look, the more you find. So I got the benches out. There's the framing for the benches. The water tank was just in between those little pieces of 2x2 there. So just held in place by the bench and the floor braces. But the rot, fortunately, it does not go past that beam there in the corner. So I tried my son-in-law's oscillating saw. So then I bought this one for 60 bucks. We'll see. So far it's great, but I've only made that one cut. But there's the rot all the way through and down there too. That will be a problem. The other ones, not so much. And so far, this one, as far as I can tell, is okay, but cupboards are a real pain to get out. I tried to move this one forward, taking out all the screws I can find, and it's still stuck. So I do not know what is holding it. And I really don't want to take the walls off from the outside, but it is an option. Is it time to cry in despair yet? That strip so rotten it fell down from here. In there. And that's rotten too. Could eat. And so this one's ready. You can do some replacement in here. Get that, find some solid bits in there, cut it back. Now here we go. Trying to do something with that. The front has to go up and over, and that's all rotten through there. That's rotten as well. The back end is the one that concerns me because I don't see any signs of where it could have been leaking. And for it to come from the window, it would have had to go all the way around the wheel well. Which, you know, there are signs that it's had water in there, but keep going, I guess. Can't stop now. It's not clear to me why they did it, but they've got this piece sticking out here. So I've done the same thing here. A little more wide, I think. Anyway, but this has to go into that wood, and the lip here is matching now. Wasn't before. So I got 4 of these bolts, 7/16 head, 1/4 inch, 4 inches long lag bolts. There's 4 of them go in here, and 1 more at the very end. Although that's a bigger bolt there, I believe. So now I'm just lining up the base plate that's there, you can see, and screw it down. Live and learn, do things twice at least. I noticed when I put this in that the angle is wrong. I made this 90-degree cut on this, but the angle is actually that, which is not 90 degrees. And I got that from this point here. Bring it in there and make sure it fits properly. Right in there, if you can see it. That tool there. Make sure to get the angle just right. Lock it up. And then I will put that edge on this board so that it falls in line with this. Here, where is it? Falls in line with that there. Here's the floor patched on the driver's side. Now we have to do I have to do the stud base. It goes all the way along. It's rotten all the way to the very back. Hopefully it's not the same on the other side. And looking at the caulking up top with the vents, that probably is not too good either. So that might be where a bunch of the water came from. But that all has to be replaced because it would just drip down onto the fiberglass and then run right down. So to try and get in here and replace some of the rot, I was trying to remove this cupboard, and I think the last thing that's holding me up is right here, this bracket, and that is in the wall, which is behind this panel. So let's see if I can do something with that. But I do want to get that back panel off too, because that will allow me access. It's much more difficult from the outside. Sometimes progress looks like destruction. I have to rip this cabinet out. And my suspicions are that this is a pre-made unit, which then they put into the unit, into the motorhome portion, and then put the whole motorhome portion onto the chassis. I don't think they built it from the chassis up. Because, among other things, there's screws here that there's no way I could get at. I had to just pry them out. So, I'm going to go with that's progress. Because now I can get in here. I can lap this portion here, put in new pieces, put a new piece along the bottom. Likewise here. It's all rotten. Looks great, don't it? This 1/8 plywood on the fiberglass is going to be a problem. Don't know how I'm going to do that yet. Or if I just ignore it. Or maybe run a strip. When I put the framing in under the window, I'm going to have to just run a strip of screws outside with a molding. Because I can't glue new pieces of plywood on there very easily. And then I have to delaminate at the back in order to do that. No way it will ever work. So I'm going to do some vacuuming, and then I'll start cutting and do some more vacuuming. This is the festivity so far. Got that piece in. Floor has been patched. Got the second rail on. So I still got to anchor it here. Doesn't look like they had anything there previously, but it's got some sagging, so it's going to get anchored from the bottom. I got the second rail, you can see, going right to the back, and it goes to the very back. The whole thing was rotten, and then you can see there's a few pieces there I have to make up yet to patch in uprights. And I'll do them the same as I did this. Just step it, glue it, and screw it in. Likewise there. So hopefully that will be sufficient. Ideally, I would have taken the whole outside off and replaced everything, but that is just, I don't think I can do that. It does not look wonderful, but it is progress. So all the wood you can see on the framing on the wall is interlaced, except for a couple of places. So It runs completely through now, all reinforced, glued, and I changed the panel glue to stuff that's set in 30 minutes. It's only 3 times normal strength instead of 8, but the other tended not to, it left a thick deposit, and so it was hard to get the pieces of wood clamped tight. So I switched to that, and it had a half-hour set, and it's a little cold for it, but all the wood that I used was room temperature. Some cases I heated it a bit, and I applied it inside. The glue is all at room temperature, so I fully expected it would take half an hour or more for it to cool. So I did that, and the wheel well is reinforced. That's been attached. I used shorter lag bolts for that one, and I put washers on them. The inner lining of the wheel cover is aluminum. It's got an aluminum sheet there. So since they're steel lag bolts, I used a washer, and then I put rubber between the steel and the aluminum just to make sure there's no battery action happening. So next thing is I'll start cleaning this up in here and get the battery box and see if we can start doing something with that. And then slowly put the panels back in. I can put the gas tank thing back in. That would work, but again, I have to use caulking, and not really the time of year for that. So onward, downward. Here's the outside strip. There was a strip of, they didn't use plywood on this. Originally they used standard 1x2, or 2x2, sorry. So I used 3 pieces of plywood. It also has an angle similar to the one up top. As you can see, the wall comes down, not vertical, and then again switches an angle here. So both of them are roughly around 15 degrees. So they're bolted together. This is bolted up with fender washers, and I cut off what was the overhang. Same thing here, you can see. So that's all in place. So I might have to put a bolt through there too, each one. So let's start continuing. That's the idea. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, or even notify, or any of the above, or all of the above. Thank you.